Hey folks, Chuck Suter, ConstitutionalWar.org. I'm here with Tom Woods, who is here at the Nullify Now event in Raleigh, North Carolina. Can you give us a brief rundown about your education and your process of coming to understand nullification and how it can actually be implemented, and some of the issues that some of the naysayers might throw at us? What your response to that would be?
Well, my own education is very traditional. I went to 2 Ivy League schools and I got the standard boilerplate about American history. And then my real education began when I studied on my own. And I discovered that, of course, the United States first was states. And then they created the federal government.
Wow.
How about that?
Hey.
Yeah. Isn't that something? That first you have the bride and groom and then you have the marriage.
Or the baby. I mean,
right. Exactly. So I explained in my talk today why it is that the states, the peoples of the states, are the sovereign bodies in this country. And if you're sovereign, that means you have the final say on things. And that means that if the federal government, in any of its 3 branches, violates the Constitution, in the last resort, the final say rests with the peoples of the states. Now, there are some naysayers. They've got arguments against this. I have a website that I dedicated just to responding to criticisms. A frequently asked questions page, nullificationfaq.com. But people will sometimes say, doesn't Article 6 of the Constitution refute this? It's the Supremacy Clause. It says, and their version of the Supremacy Clause is that any old law the federal government passes is the supreme law of the land. But the Supremacy Clause actually says, all laws made in pursuance of the Constitution are the supreme law of the land. Okay, but what if the law isn't pursuant to the Constitution? That's the point. That's when we need nullification. And no, you can't wait for the federal government to rein itself in or solve the problems that it itself caused. The states, the peoples of the states, are the people who started the whole thing going. And as James Madison said, they obviously need some defense mechanism to prevent their own creation, the federal government, from destroying them. It's common sense.
And what you mentioned James Madison, and I know that you have talked about James Madison, Thomas Jefferson, Kentucky, Virginia resolutions. What was that about, and what was the result of that?
The Virginia-Kentucky resolutions of 1798 were basically saying that the states, in the last resort, have the power to tell the federal government to go stick it if it violates the Constitution. That you can't say, well, we've got 3 branches of the federal government, that'll stop it from doing bad things. How? How would that stop it from doing bad things? It was violating free speech already 10 years after the Constitution was ratified. So obviously that isn't enough of a guarantee. And then after that, even though the New England states were not in favor of what Jefferson and Madison had said, 10 years later, when the federal government's oppressing them, all of a sudden they favor being able to stand up to the federal government. So this is an American view. It was as American as apple pie. You had all kinds of northern states embracing these principles. And that was back when American history used to be interesting, when the states used to actually do things. And it wasn't just, we live in a giant blob, and that blob issues irresistible, infallible commands to be obeyed by everybody else. No, the whole point of our conference this week, this weekend, was to say, you know what, we don't live in a giant blob. We live in a collection of self-governing societies, and we ought to remember that.
Yeah, and obviously the 10th Amendment Center, I think, is a website out there.
10thamendmentcenter.com, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely, and current events. We kind of see it maybe from the left a little bit. I think it's Colorado and Washington have nullified some drug laws, or maybe not exactly what Jefferson and those guys
but it's the same effect.
And then also on the right side.
And in Vermont, and hemp, and then in Alaska, it's guns, and in other states, there are all kinds of issues where this is a kind of thing where you can see a kind of a cross-pollination, where you can see some kind of ideological coming together, where we don't agree on this issue or that issue, but we do agree that maybe it's okay for Vermont to be Vermont, and Alaska to be Alaska, and California to be California. That's supposed to be what makes the United States different from all other countries. And a lot of people talk about the United States is the best country in the world, it's the awesomest country ever, America is exceptional. Well, okay, well how? In what way? Well, it's exceptional in that it's a collection of societies that can each govern itself the way it wants to.
And I would like to say that my state of North Carolina is better than some other states. I think that we've got some ways to go. But, along the lines of abortion, I would like to see Roe v. Wade nullified. Is that possible?
Well, it's possible in the sense that you can do it, but the question would be, is the federal government going to recognize it? So what nullification in our day and age really is about, I view it as like civil disobedience with the sanction of the state. And then the question becomes, does the federal government want to expend its political capital to come after you? Which, for example, in Washington and Colorado, they basically said, look, we have other fish to fry, we're not going to bother. So those states are just openly defying federal laws, and they're getting away with it the way people would have imagined that they would, the way Jefferson envisioned that they would. Nullification is the rightful remedy. You don't just say, well, it was fun having a constitution while it lasted, but all good things must come to an end. You have to fight back, and you don't fight back by saying, well, I'll wait 75 years to see if the courts will one day fix this. The courts are the problem.
Yeah, legislating from the bench. And last question, Obamacare. I was a very big supporter of what Ted Cruz, Mike Lee, Mark Meadows from my own state here in North Carolina were doing to defund, and I think that is a very good effort. Now we've awakened a giant, maybe in this country, and at the state levels. We know with the Real ID Act, it was nullified, kind of a de facto nullification.
Right.
Is there a chance for a de facto nullification of Obamacare or an all-out nullification of Obamacare at the state level, and what would you see that as?
Well, there may be, I mean, given there are 8 gazillion pages of the legislation and 8 billion gazillion pages of additional regulations and interpretations of the regulation, so I'm sure there are a lot of loopholes you can find if somebody is insane enough to try to read all that. You can find areas where the states can challenge it, and then you should exploit those. The key thing is, nullification doesn't solve all our problems. Because if the federal government is going to punish you for not buying health insurance, and the IRS is just going to dock your tax refund, there's not a whole lot that the states can do that people are prepared to allow them to do to protect you. So it can't solve all problems, but I do think there are ways the states can throw as many monkey wrenches into the works of this thing as possible. And then meanwhile, I think people are going to realize that this program is actually costing them a lot more than they thought they were going to get free stuff and this and that. Then they find out, wait a minute, I'm paying double what I used to pay?
Oh yeah.
This is supposed to make me
Triple,
better off?
quadruple,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
forget it.
Excellent. And come on, man, let's have some websites. We want to know how, I want to get more people coming to you, coming to Mike Church, who is also here. How do we get this information out there? I think you're one of the guys that's going to be able to help.
Well, thanks. TomWoods.com is the key one, and now I've started a daily Monday through Friday show, and that's at TomWoodsRadio.com.
And one last thing, I don't want you to leave out. I think there's some kind of education material. What is that?
I have a site called LibertyClassroom.com where you can get the education in history, economics, philosophy that probably we didn't get in school, let's be honest. But now it's not too late. You can get it while you're driving your car, taught by me and by other people we trust.
Excellent. Thank you for
All
coming
right.
to North Carolina, and thanks for the
Anytime.
interview.
Right.
Chuck Suter, ConstitutionalWar.org, with none other than the great Tom Woods.